You've now entered the warehouse. For his first trick, the masked magician will turn one of his assistants into a tiger. He'll begin by showing you what the illusion is supposed to look like. Then you'll see how it's actually done. It doesn't matter where you see these illusions performed, in a glitzy Vegas show, a big-budget television special, or a show like this where we've stripped away the fancy lasers and pyrotechnics. The tricks are all basically the same. The masked magician makes his entrance. It's important to remember that none of the illusions you will see have been achieved through camera tricks. The magician selects an assistant and puts her into the cage. The cage is then covered by a yellow curtain. There's a reason for this. You'll notice that in many of tonight's tricks, curtains or other obstructions are used to hide what's going on behind the scenes. This is when most illusions are actually pulled off. The cage is lifted into the air, making it impossible for anything or anyone to get in or out. All attention is now focused on the cage. Our magician strikes a dramatic pose. And when the curtains are removed, our assistant has been turned into a 500-pound tiger. It seems pretty magical, but obviously there has to be a logical explanation. Okay, let's let the cat out of the bag and show you how the trick is done. Believe it or not, the tiger is actually inside the cage during the entire illusion. To keep him hidden from view, the tiger must be positioned behind a fake wall. Before that can happen, the trainer must first make him as comfortable as possible in his cage. And that means feeding him plenty of raw meat. While one of the trainers distracts the tiger with the meat, another trainer slides the tiger's hind legs against the rear of the cage. Nice kitty. Then the fake wall is gently put into place. The tiger is trained to stand in a confined space, but only for a short period of time, so everything must happen fast. When the actual performance begins, the tiger is already positioned behind the fake wall as the assistant enters the cage. The drapes are drawn. And with our mini lipstick camera, we can see the assistant drop into a secret compartment at the base of the cage. While inside, she pulls on a cord that releases the tiger into the cage. This must be done with perfect timing or the girl and the tiger will end up in the cage at the same time. From this angle, you can see that the cage is round at the bottom. This is where our assistant is hiding. Take another look. The compartment is extremely shallow. That's why you don't see too many overweight assistants. Our slender assistant must remain perfectly still or the tiger will know that lunch is just inches away. It may seem simple, but that's how you turn a lady into a tiger, no matter who's performing the trick. Now the Chinese lantern trick. In case you're wondering, these are not the masked magician's regular assistants, so that won't help you identify them. First, notice the assistant with the ribbons. She has absolutely nothing to do with the trick. Her rhythmic gymnastics are merely a diversion, but a nice one. Now our magician brings out a light. This is an important part of the trick because the illusion is all about light and shadows. If something were concealed within a secret compartment of the lantern, you'd be able to see its shadow. The idea is to prove to the audience that the lantern is empty. It certainly looks empty. When a magician goes to these lengths to prove his point, you know he's up to something. The light is put in place, and the lantern is closed. He takes us around one more time to show there's nothing hidden behind the lantern. Now it's time for the illusion to begin. Amazingly, a shadow appears from inside the lantern. I told you he was up to something. For effect, our magician puts himself into a deep trance as the shadow magically takes on the form of a woman. Now for the big finish. With a little more showmanship, he transforms the shadow into a real human being. But despite all the artistry, we all know that it was just one big trick. Now we'll show you how it was done. As the lantern is brought out, one of the assistants is already hidden inside. Once the lantern is put into position, the assistant slips out a back panel and hides from view. Our magician uses the light to demonstrate that the lantern is empty, which of course it is because our assistant is still hiding outside. He passes the light between the lantern and the assistant in order to avoid casting a visible shadow. The light is put into place and the front of the lantern is closed. The assistant slips back inside the lantern and waits for her cue. Since she can't see the magician's hands, these choreographed movements are triggered by musical cues. What teamwork. Now let's see what it looks like from inside the lantern. Watch as the assistant gets closer to the front screen, making it seem as if a woman is magically materializing. But we know there's nothing really magical about it. Finally, the assistant pops through the front of the lantern, and our magician has done it again. Now one of magic's bread and butter tricks, levitating a woman. The illusion begins with our assistant taking a few moments to set up the trick. She's trying to prove that the ring is solid. I can tell you right now that it is. More girls, more rings, more dancing. It's all part of the performance to make the trick seem even bigger than it really is. The magician looks for just the right assistant to levitate. Sometimes a magician will select someone from the audience. That person is known as a shill and is always in on the trick. What a shock. He chooses the assistant that just happens to be wearing the long flowing gown. Her dress is an important part of the illusion. The magician gazes into her eyes, as if to put her into a deep trance. This is to convince you he's a master hypnotist. The assistant acts as if she's under our magician's hypnotic powers. puts her on the table and her body appears to go limp. Now the levitation begins. It appears as if she's floating in midair. Obviously, this is impossible. He moves his hand underneath her body to show that nothing is supporting her. Now he moves the ring completely around her, proving she isn't being suspended by wires or cables. Remember, as we told you before, the ring is solid. The magician makes it appear as if he's using his hands to guide her down. Slowly, she floats back to her original position and is brought out of her hypnotic trance. Now, for all of you playing at home, here's how it's done. First, in order to levitate, you don't need to be put into a trance. All you need is some heavy machinery and the right evening gown. Look closely. When our assistant's dress is not draped properly, you can see that she's actually lying on top of a 3-foot wide platform. The platform is black, so you won't be able to see it against our curtain. It's attached to a hydraulic forklift positioned behind the curtain. When the magician gives the cue, the magical forklift operator raises and lowers the platform. It's not very magical when you see how it's done. Now, what about the solid metal ring? It looks like it passes completely around the assistant. But this is merely an example of sleight of hand. He's only making it appear as if the ring is going all the way around her. From the back, we can see that the bar attached to the forklift prevents the ring from going all the way around the assistant's body. It's the magician's sleight of hand that makes it look as if it really did. And that's the secret behind this classic illusion. Sorry to bring you back down to earth, but this is the only way to levitate. Without a doubt, Houdini was the greatest escape artist who ever lived. Since then, thousands of magicians have repeated his death-defying escapes. You're about to find out how they're done. The magician is put into a straitjacket. This is a real straitjacket, the kind you'd find at any good asylum. It would be virtually impossible for anyone to get out of it. The straps are securely fastened. Then the magician is loaded into a large box. As he struggles with the straitjacket, the lid is put into place. Now his assistants chain it down and drill it shut. The box is rigged with explosives. He has less than a minute to get out. Again, the obligatory dancing. You'll notice that the assistants are all dressed exactly alike. There's a reason for this. We'll tell you why in a minute. What appears to be a stick of dynamite is attached to the box. The fuse is lit. The tension is mounting. Our magician has only a few seconds left to get out. Even though the audience knows this is only an illusion, it's still pretty convincing. For a second, you actually think it could be real. But you've been fooled. He's not only escaped from the straitjacket in the box, he's now in a different part of the warehouse. Here's how he did it. First, for the straitjacket. As the magician is buckled into the straitjacket, he keeps his arms stiff and away from his body, giving him enough slack to eventually escape. Even using this technique, getting out of the straitjacket won't be easy. This part of the trick requires lots of practice. Let's take a look inside the box. As you can see, that extra slack is really coming in handy. Remember, timing is critical. Our magician has less than 60 seconds to remove the straitjacket and exit the box before it's lifted into the air and blown up. Now, remember when we told you about the assistants' outfits? Well, you're about to find out why they're all dressed alike. Inside the box, and now free from the straitjacket, our magician puts on a black jumpsuit that's been hidden inside. It's exactly the same as those worn by his assistants. Then he slips out a trapdoor at the back of the box. He puts on a matching cap complete with long, fake hair. Now he's disguised as one of his assistants. This is where the dynamite comes in. It's not only used to create tension, but also to serve as a diversion, allowing our magician to sneak away. See him crouching down there? He runs up a flight of stairs and gets into position just before the explosion. When the smoke clears, he steps out of his hiding place and onto a nearby catwalk. Bet you didn't know that's how it's done. We've all seen this next trick. It's called the 3-cube box. As always, a little performance helps our magician make the illusion seem more spectacular than it really is. One of the assistants steps inside the box and the magician closes and locks the doors. For effect, he checks his blades to prove to the audience that they're solid. Then he hands his assistant a red handkerchief. This is to help sell the illusion. He feigns resistance, as if the blades are actually cutting into it. But we know that can't be happening because the assistant is still smiling, even though the blades appear to be passing right through her. Now for the second blade. Again, he pretends to be having a tough time pushing it through. She waves in order to show that those hands are really hers. The middle section of the box is slid apart. The hanky's moving. She's still alive. The magician gives you a look at all sides of the box. Then he waves his hand through the missing portion to prove that the trick isn't done with mirrors. It appears that her middle is gone. He pushes the box back into place. One at a time, the blades are removed. He unlocks the door, and our assistant gets out. All in one piece. To show you how this trick is done, we've removed the middle section of the box. You won't believe how simple this one is. First, our assistant steps into the box and our magician locks her inside. Then all she does is turn her body sideways and suck in her stomach. Now notice the blades. The handle is considerably wider than the blade itself, an important fact that is concealed by magicians. This creates the illusion that the blades are the same width as the box and are cutting into the assistant. But we can tell that she's really not in any danger. Now the second blade is inserted into the box. It slides right past her leg. When the magician moves the middle section across, we can see that our assistant's body never moves. Instead, the box moves around her. Take another look in slow motion. Another key to the trick is this vertical strip. Because it's black, it blends in perfectly with the black background, making it appear that the center box has moved further than it really has. Pretty simple, huh? The box is put back together, and the illusion is complete. Here's a trick that you can buy at any magic store. It's known as the linking rings. First, the magician shows you that the rings are solid. They sure look solid. Somehow he hooks two of them together. Then he magically separates them. Again, solid, yet together. He does the same trick again, only this time with 3 rings. He puts them together. Then he takes them apart. Do you know how he did it? Actually, you won't believe how simple it is. While our magician appears to be forcing the rings together, it's really just sleight of hand. See? There's a tiny gap in one of the rings, which he conceals in the palm of his hand. Since the hand is quicker than the eye, we need to watch in slow motion. Bet you didn't see that the first time, did you? Separating the rings simply requires more sleight of hand. Although it looks like the rings are still linked together, they were actually unhooked a moment earlier. Here's the move. And the rings are now apart. And that's the secret of linking rings. Now for a more complicated illusion, the masked magician will show you how the famous metamorphosis trick is done. He begins by pounding on a wooden crate to prove that the sides are solid. Definitely a real crate. Right on cue, here comes the assistant. She is put inside a large red bag, which is tied tightly at the top, making it seem like she can't get out. Now the bag is placed into the crate. The lid is put on and fastened down with ropes. Sometimes magicians will use chains or locks. It doesn't matter. It's all an illusion. To prove that the crate is solid enough to support his weight, the magician stands on top of it. Then the curtain is raised, and he gets inside. The curtain goes down, and he begins to flirt with his assistants. The curtain goes up again. More diversionary tactics. The curtain goes up for the last time, and magically the magician is turned into one of his assistants. Remember? She was the one inside the bag. Now it's time to open the crate. The ropes are untied. And who do you think is inside the bag? You got it. The masked magician. How did he do it? Like we told you, this one's pretty complicated. To help you understand, here's a better look. We saw the assistant being placed into a large red bag, which was tied at the top. What you didn't realize is the bottom of the bag has a zipper. She's unzipping it right now. Once the assistant gets out of the bag, she reaches through a hole in the bottom of the crate and pulls on the rope to make it seem as if the lid is tightly secured. It really isn't. The extra slack will later allow her to slide the lid off the crate and make a quick escape. See? When the curtain goes up for the first time, the assistant climbs out and hides between the curtain and the crate while the magician puts one foot inside. The curtain goes up again, and in goes the other foot. As the curtain goes up for the third time, he quickly climbs inside and closes the lid, as his assistant is revealed on top of the crate. The timing has to be just right in order to look like an instant metamorphosis. Our magician scrambles to get inside the bag while his assistants rush to untie the ropes. He doesn't have to worry about zipping up the bag since his feet are obscured from view. And that's how it's done. We've all seen a magician saw a woman in half. Now we're going to show you how it's done. The first thing you need is a willing assistant. Of course, it has to seem like she's not willing. After all, who wants to be sawed in half? The assistant is shackled at the neck and ankles. This is to make it look like she can't move. Special boxes are then put in place and strapped to the table. The doors are opened so we can see the assistant trapped inside. This is one of the things that makes this trick so effective. Finally, her hands are tied. She's not going anywhere. The doors are closed. Now, here comes the saw. This is a real saw. The blade is very sharp. But as you'll see later, that doesn't matter. The magician and his assistant make it appear as if they're sawing through her body. Sometimes this will be embellished by screams coming from the assistant inside the box. The saw is removed, but our magician isn't done yet. More blades are inserted through the center of the box. He makes it seem like he hit bone, but if this were really happening, the assistant would be dead. Now for the amazing part of the trick, the assistant is split in half and made dizzy just for good measure. Sometimes you'll see feet sticking out the other end of the box. These are fake feet that move by remote control. The boxes are put back together and the blades are pulled out. The straps are untied. The boxes are removed. And there she is, still shackled to the table. The shackles are unlocked, and from here you can see that her stomach looks just fine. Now for the moment of truth. Here's how it's done. First, the assistant must appear to be completely immobilized. This is the key to the entire illusion. Check out the leg restraints. It's supposed to look like no one could get out of them. But watch. There's just enough room for her to slip free. It takes a really limber assistant to pull off a trick like this. Once the box is closed, she quickly gets out of her shackles and folds her body into the top half of the box, just in time to avoid the blade. This is actually pretty dangerous. The timing must be just right, because the assistant has no way to signal to the magician that she's clear of the saw. To enhance the illusion, the boxes are spun around while the assistant remains curled up inside the top half of the box. After the boxes are put back together, the assistant slips her feet back into the restraints, making it seem as if she's been locked in the entire time. The boxes are removed. The shackles are unlocked. And that's the trick. We told you it was simple.